Um, because I don't have a PDF of the book as well, so I don't have anything that I can annotate on screen. But you have your own book, so we'll go through. I don't think the page numbers might not be the same, but let's try to make this work. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Let's see. So the first chapter is about is based on this visit that Mr. Nanga makes to the school where the the main character Odile is teaching. Yeah, he's a teacher, right? Okay, so as I said, this really shows the kind of relationship that Naga has with the people. Why he is a man of the people, right? All right, let's see. Let's start reading from not the whole part because you already have in the first page. You already have the kind of preparation that is being made. Okay, can someone read from as I stood in one corner of that vast
Shall I read
mart?
it? Yes.
Yes, please.
As I stood in one corner of that vast tumult, waiting for the arrival of the minister, I felt intense bitterness welling up in my mouth. Here were silly, ignorant villagers dancing themselves lame and waiting to blow off their gunpowder in honor of one of those who had started the country off down the slopes of inflation. I wished for a miracle, for a voice of thunder, to hush this ridiculous festival and tell the poor contemptible people one or two truths. But of course, it would be quite useless. They were not only ignorant, but cynical. Tell them that this man had used his position to enrich himself, and they would ask you, as my father did, if you thought that a sensible man would spit out the juicy morsel that good fortune placed in his mouth.
Okay, right. This is what we were talking about earlier, isn't it? What I told you about complicity, right? Because the the protagonist or the main character Odile seems like a different person because he is not giving into the spectacle, right? He's not giving in. He has a different view. He seems to think critically of the politician, but who he calls silly, ignorant villagers dancing themselves lame and waiting to blow off their gunpowder in honor. So they are, as you can see, a willing part of the spectacles that are very common in political cultures in our countries, right? Everything is a spectacle. If you think of recent parts, the kind of the way for example, the Ambanta report was opened with, hundreds of dancers dancing somewhere in this sort of a pit-like place. It's the kind of stages that were made, right? It's a spectacle for the enjoyment to make this image of this and to make this image of untouchability, and they are also placing the politician on a pedestal, right? He's so removed. He's almost like a otherworldly figure. That is why these comparisons between kings and whatnot, no? So here the people are part of the spectacle. That is the important point here, right? And they were not only ignorant. I mean, they are not only silly and ignorant. They are not really. They're not really ignorant, but they were cynical. Cynical in the sense that they think, yeah, this is how things are. You can't help it. What else can you do? That kind of cynicism. That is when you have lived through this kind of system your whole life and you can't see any other alternative. And you see this. This is the normal for them. This kind of this kind of corruption, this kind of favoritism, this kind of nepotism, kleptocracy is what is normal. So they are cynical. Tell them this man had used his position to enrich himself, and they would ask you if you thought that a sensible man would spit out the juicy morsel that good fortune placed in his mouth. For him, that's okay. What Nanga is doing is okay because he's just a sensible man. He has been given power, he's using it to live comfortably. What else would you expect him to do? Okay, that level of kind of justification, right? Because that is once again because of internalized certain internalized beliefs. And having lived through probably their whole life in this kind of situation, you can't see differently, right? Can somebody continue, please? No, sorry. Is there anything that anybody would like to share about the passage that was just read out?
Man is highly critical about things due to his education. Due to his
Looks
education,
like it. Yes, it looks like it. It looks like education is what distinguishes him from the other one, but it cannot be solely because of that, because there are other teachers who are more than happy to stand in line to be introduced to the minister. Is that not so? Right? So it cannot be the only reason, but I think that is what we are going to read out and see. He has also had certain experiences of seeing the first hand of the workings, how these narratives around politicians work. So he has seen behind the screen, so to speak, right? So with that, coupled with his education, so I think he is in the place where he is now. And remember how he's thinking and speaking at the beginning, and see how he also changes a little bit towards the end of the novel. Okay, keep this in mind how he thinks about Nanga at this point. Right. Anything else? Anybody else wants to share?
and the people that they are cynical as they are helpless because they don't have any way or mean because that they are so innocent and is that they accept whatever they get and they appreciate it and be content with what they have. That's so innocent because they don't struggle. The reason behind that is they don't sense that because they figure out these political figures as that they are so honest. Is it so, ma'am?
Uh, Semondi, I don't know whether innocent is the right word you can describe to use to describe people who are just apathetic and cynical, and then laissez-faire, letting things be as they are. I don't think innocent is the right word. Um, Probably lots of other things, but I don't think they just don't know anything and they can't. They're completely powerless because we're talking about a democracy, in our country also. You vote the politician. At least you have a vote. You have elected them. You have ideal technically, right? The power is in the hands of the people. Um, so innocent is probably not. They're just apathetic. They're just cynical. There is another one. Yeah. I would,
Manipulated, no? Manipulated.
yes. Yeah, very expertly manipulated, you could say. I wouldn't call them innocent. Unlikely I would do that. Right. Okay. Shall we continue reading? Could someone read, please, from I Had Not Always Disliked?
I had not always disliked Mr. Nanga. 16 years ago or so, he had been my teacher in Standard 3, and something like his favorite pupil. I remember him then as a popular young and handsome teacher, most impressive in his uniform as scoutmaster. There was one there was on one of the walls of the school a painting of a faultlessly handsome scoutmaster wearing an impeccable uniform. I'm not sure that the art teacher who painted the picture had Mr. Nanga in mind. There was no facial resemblance, still, we called it the picture of Mr. Nanga. It was enough that they were both handsome and that they were both impressive scoutmasters. And this picture stood with arms folded. That they were both no. This picture stood with arms folded across its chest, and its raised right foot resting neatly and lightly on the perfectly cut tree stump. The bright red hibiscus flowers decorated the four corners of the frame, and below were inscribed the memorable words, "Not what I have, but what I do is my kingdom." That was in 1948. So I continue.
Yes, please.
And Nanga must have gone into politics soon afterwards and then won a seat in the parliament. It was easy in those days before we knew its cash price. I used to read about him in the papers some years later and even took something like pride in him. At that time, I had just entered the university and was very active in the students' branch of the People's Organization Party. Then in 1960, something disgraceful happened in the party, and I was completely disillusioned. At that time, Mr. Nanga was an unknown backbencher in the governing POP. A general election was imminent. The POP was riding high in the country, and there was no fear of its not being returned. Its opponent, the Progressive Alliance Party, was weak and disorganized. Then came the slump in the international coffee market. Overnight or so, it seemed to us, the government had a dangerous financial crisis on its hands. Coffee was the prop of our economy, just as coffee farmers were the bulwark of the POP. The Minister of Finance at that time was a first-rate economist with a PhD in public finance. He presented to the cabinet a complete plan for dealing with the situation. The Prime Minister said no to the plan. He was not going to risk losing the election by cutting down the price paid to coffee planters at the critical moment. The National Bank should be instructed to print 15 million pounds. Two-thirds of the cabinet supported the minister. The next morning, the Prime Minister sacked them, and in the evening, he broadcast to the nation. He said the dismissed ministers were conspirators and traitors who had teamed up with the foreign saboteurs to destroy the new nation.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So this is the backstory, and we get a very clear glimpse of the kind of politics that are going on behind closed doors, so to speak. But this is actually quite open, right? So this is something once again that we can very easily relate to: the printing of money, the collapse of economies, and the government not taking the right steps because they don't want to lose votes, right? Here, Mr. Anga has been a teacher, right? A man of the people, in the sense that he has ordinary origins, so to speak. He has been a teacher, and then he has gotten a seat in the parliament. He has been popular, and Odile has been disillusioned with him because something happened within the party, because he has been a very active member of the student branch of it as a university student. This is what you said about education, right? Yes. So he has, we will assume that somebody who has gone to university is intelligent and has critical capacities, not only book knowledge, but actually to look at a situation and think critically and form your own opinions. Okay, I hope. Right. And then, so there has been a crisis, a financial crisis. The POP has been very popular, but financial crisis has come, and the Minister of Public Finance, a man, the first rate economic with a PhD, so clearly a man who knew what he was doing, put forward a plan to deal with this. The Prime Minister said no, not because the plan was bad, but because he did not want to adopt the measures that will lose him his votes. So he did not care about the country, about the economy. What did he care about? About winning the upcoming election. So he was not going to jeopardize that for the betterment of, long-term betterment of the country and the economy, right? So here you see the kind of self-centered, selfish politics that the Nigeria had, right? Every government is like that. So the kind of the self-centered, greed-driven politics that the Prime Minister represents, right? So what did he say? No money, you print money and give it down anyway. And then the next morning, they sacked the ones that who did not support the plan, and then evening broadcast to the nation. He said the dismissed ministers were conspirators and traitors who had teamed up with foreign saboteurs to destroy the new nation. Now, This is once again, it's very familiar. Can you remember the time at which this, what do you call it in Sinhala? There was this very, very, like, this passionate phrase. What was that? Can somebody remember? Vimal Veeravansha was like such a big part of that kind of campaigns. Uh, Adhirajavadi Balavega. Could you
Yeah,
remember?
he protested and had biscuits underneath.
My goodness, what a joke, right? So anyway, this kind of, once again, so this kind of narrative, this kind of discourse where you find enemies outside is the kind of discourse that politicians fall back on when you yourself are a failure, right? This is to distract the people. Okay, Adhirajavadi, Balabeg, and whatnot, whatnot. Nobody's interested. We are a small country, third world to boot, right? But this is the kind of discourse that they fall back on when they are failing. Similar thing is exactly the same thing happens here. He said dismiss means the conspirators, traitors were teamed up with the foreign saboteurs to destroy the new nation. So what you can see is divisive rhetoric. Once again, heart at the heart of post-colonial politics most of the time. Divisive rhetoric. You always set somebody against another one. Some community against the other. So you see the divisive rhetoric. So if you have traitors and conspirators, you have patriots on the other side, right? Divisive rhetoric and also othering. No, it's once again a concept. Edward Zaids or Homi K. Baba. This concept of othering in colonial and post-colonial contexts, right? You create an other where all the hate and anger could be channeled, right? Even in when it comes to civil wars and things like that, once again you have a self and an other, an enemy and a hero, sort of this dichotomy, this binary, where there is no room for middle ground. Right? And also fear mongering, isn't it? Like, foreign saboteurs to destroy the new nation. So this is also fear mongering, which we could see in Sri Lanka also in the aftermath of Easter bomb attacks, right? All these things we could see. And also, so on one hand, when you're talking about conspirators and traitors, you also on the other hand invoking patriotism. So the prime minister is invoking the support of the people on the premise of patriotism, the love for your country. No? But the love he has at his heart, his self-love, but he is invoking the love for the country. It's just a pretext, isn't it? Patriotism. Right. Anything else you want to add here? Anything else?
Ma'am has already created that now currently he has such image about M.A. Nanga because of that experience that he had working in uh, the student branch of People's Organizing Party and what they
Yeah.
have done.
Yeah.
So he is having that image and that working with Nanga, isn't it, ma'am?
Later on, yes, he goes to his house, he enjoys the luxuries there. So once again, the complicity, right? So this is what I am asking. So does the narrator seem above or inside this corruption? At this point, he seems above the corruption. But later on, he seems inside this corruption because he is tempted by the same luxuries that Nanga enjoys. Because his aim also becomes to have a car to parade it around, right? Things like that. Okay. All right. I'm going to read the next part. Oh no, can somebody else read, please? I remember this broadcast very well. Could someone read, please?
Shall I?
Yes, please.
I remember this broadcast very well. Of course, no one knew the truth at that time. The newspapers and the radio carried the Prime Minister's version of the story. We were very, uh, indignant. Our student union met in emergency session and passed a vote of confidence in the leader and called for a detention law to deal with the the miscreants. The whole country was behind the leader. The protest marches and demonstrations were staged up and down the land. It
Thank you.
was okay.
Thank you, Arya. Yes, okay. So he knows what happened really, right? He knew the finance minister was a man of sound knowledge and a plan, but he will discuss and how now this is the aftermath, how it was spun for the public. This was how the story was created for the consumption of public with the complicity of the media, right? So you have these parties and media doing the government's bidding. Sri Lanka, I'm always fascinated by the about turns that the government media do in the aftermath of election when the power changes hand. The night before, you are tearing this whatever the candidate to pieces, and when that candidate comes to power, I always think, do they have no integrity at all? Do not they realize like how cowardly they are? Because the night before they will really write such trash about a candidate, and if that person is elected to power, the next day is almost like a comedy show, watching the same news in the same channel. Right. But anyway, so you have partisan media here. This broadcast very well. No one knew the truth at the time. The newspapers and the radio carried the prime minister's version of the story. So this is the dominant narrative. This is what the history will record, right? Because the powerful always dictate the history, the written records, right? We were very indignant. Our students' union met in emergency session and passed a vote of confidence in the leader and called the detention law to deal with the miscreants. The whole country was behind the leader because, of course, the leader invoked patriotism and labeled these other ministers as traitors. So there is, of course, black and white. There's no other choice to make other than supporting the leader and the prime minister, right? It was at this point I noticed um, protest marches and demonstrations were staged up and down the land. So once again, the people are participating in their own downfall, as you can see. It was at this point that I first noticed a new, dangerous, and sinister note in the universal outcry. The Daily Chronicle, an official organ of the POP, the official organ of the POP, just like there are certain media outlet in Sri Lanka, I think, is it ITN and Rupavahini, I guess, right? They are government affiliated always, no matter what government comes. Has pointed out in an editorial that the miscreant gang, as the dismissed ministers were now called, were all university people and highly educated professional men. So now earlier the division, the othering was made between the Nigerians and the foreigners, right? These were foreign who were teamed up with foreign saboteurs. And now the divisions are being made between people, between Nigerians themselves. The educated class is singled out as the enemy at this point. Can someone read the editorial, the cutting of the editorial, please?
Ma'am, shall I?
Yes, please.
Let us now and for all time exact from our body politic as a distinct extracts a stinking tooth all those decadent stooges versed in textbook economics and aping the white man's mannerisms and way of speaking. We are proud to be Africans. Our true leaders are not those intoxicated with their Oxford, Cambridge, or Harvard degrees, but those who speak the language of the people. Away with the damnable and expensive university education, which only alienates an African from his rich and ancient culture and puts him above his people.
All right. Could you guys comment on this, please? Because there are so many interesting things going on.
Beautiful language, no, he has used the simile. Extract from the body politics, the dentist extract from the stinking
Yeah.
food. like very and how we also know sometimes we also look down upon the university students who are just marching and protesting, blocking
Yeah.
roads,
Yeah.
the education. So they are using the same in their own, I mean,
Yes.
And I think there's also distinctive like segregation. So like you said earlier, Miss, he created this division between the foreigner and the Nigerian, but now um,
Cambridge.
also the Nigerians who have got those who have got through the Western education system.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yeah.
highlighting the universities, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Ivy universities.
Yeah.
Is it because like majority of the Nigerians like don't have access to these opportunities, Miss? He's able to create this hate
And the
and this
language,
division.
That
just
is
talking of the language of
not
the people.
only that, it is not only about everybody not getting access to these institutions. I think it's also a matter of this is a discourse of division and othering that kind of pits a certain, like a authentic Nigerianness against something. This one, can you see the line? Textbook economics and aping the white man's mannerisms, like in Sri Lanka, like in South Asian context, in post-colonial kind of jargon, what is called like a brown sahib, like a brown sahib in the sense that somebody who is educated, like in Sri Lankan, I think in Sri Lankan history, for example, even Bandaranaike was somebody like that. Have you heard this story where people say like he used to eat kiribat with a fork?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this kind of, the alienation. So this they are like pitting against, they are saying if you are Western educated, you are no longer like an authentic son of the land sort of discourse going on here.
Isn't that still going on between person like Ranil and Anura? Like
Yeah,
Anura seems the authentic
exactly.
son, whereas Ranil, no.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit like westernized. No, this idea is that he's westernized and alienated from the concerns of the grassroots level. So an idea. So something similar is going on here. But the point here is that what is sinister is that it's the argument is against education, right? Education here is vilified because that is actually something dangerous for the political class, like proper education, thinking critically. That is something problematic for the ruling class, because then you have people who are less gullible, cannot be
Ma'am,
manipulated. Yeah.
yes, this part, ma'am, that what I feel is it's completely an illusion because
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they try to arouse patriotism. That sorry, that yes, they try to arouse
Mm.
patriotism, but truly that the reason behind
Yeah.
that is in order to secure themselves in this political
Yes.
context.
Exactly. Because people who have put forward the sensible plan are educated people. Now you have to demonize them, right? So you target their education from where they have got it, so on and so forth, right? And they argue that they are not real Nigerians. Away with the damnable and expensive university education, which only alienates an African from his rich and ancient culture and puts him above his people. Rich and ancient culture. This is also the kind of
This
rhetoric.
is like a propaganda, right? Designed to
Of course,
discourage
this
people.
is what is exactly this is what is called propaganda. I mean, this is the kind of rhetoric anyway post-colonial nations like politicians resort to create divisions. In terms of like the in Sri Lanka sometimes, and in India this is happening it's a scary scale now, about Hinduism, the way of life, and in Sri Lanka also, whenever in terms of what is going on now, so the kind of opposition against reforms and all that, you always refer to culture and your heritage, Sinhala, Buddhist, whatever. right? What do you call it? At some point, it was once again like a very powerful discourse. We have a what do you call it in Sinhala? මොකද අවුරුදු 2500ක් පරණ උරුමයක් තියෙනවා අපිට, that kind of thing, right? Against anything that
ජාතික
is,
අභිමානය.
yeah,
ජාතික අභිමානය.
yeah,
ජාතික අභිමානයනේ.
exactly. So things like that. It's a similar discourse that is happening here, right? I mean, fine, be proud of it, but also realize that you are in a shitty situation because that has not nothing for you, na? Really? Like, I
Um,
mean,
Very bad.
yeah, it's also problematic, no, miss. You can't really question how like Nigerian they are if they are Nigerians,
yes,
right?
exactly.
Like just
Yeah, and
because they have
also it
got the Western education.
and also it claims that higher education makes Africans alienated, like disconnected from their
Yes,
own
exactly.
culture.
Yeah, yeah.
It also
Alienated
suggests that
people are
intellectuals are
alienated.
dangerous, no, because they make like
Exactly.
questions,
Most intellectuals are dangerous. This is why
because
they
they
are
question
describing.
because
Yeah.
they question the
Yes,
corrupted leaders and
exactly.
challenge
Mhm.
them.
Yes, exactly. This is why the intellectual class is demonized. All right. This cry, so we'll continue. We don't have a lot of time. This cry was taken up on all sides. Other newspapers pointed out that even in Britain, where the Miss President got its so-called education, a man need not to be an economist to be the chancellor of the exchequer or the doctor to be the minister of health. What mattered was loyalty to the party. See, they are taking education out of the equation and replacing it with blind loyalty. Blind loyalty, right? So you don't have to have the qualification. If you are loyal to the party, that's fine. So this is exactly how countries go down the drain. Um, and once again, my goodness, Sri Lanka, right? We have had convicted criminals in parliament, not even accused one. Convicted criminals in parliament simply because they were loyal. And we have had thugs in the parliament because they did what these clean-handed, white-handed politicians couldn't do. They were basically their guard dogs, right? So this is the kind of loyalty that is advocated here as well.
I
I
think the
was in
politicians themselves are accepted, right? The drug dealers and all big,
yes,
the
exactly.
notorious business
Yes.
fellows are the ones who are getting into politics to get their way around.
Yeah, yes, exactly. My goodness, that is completely true. And just on a side note, do you guys know? I think you guys know that we had kind of held the world record for the biggest cabinet of the world at some point in our in Mahinda Rajapaksa's time. I think it was in 2010, 15 that we had 107 ministers in the cabinet. I'll never forget that. But it was a thing that was talked about. It was called a jumbo cabinet. It was the biggest in the world ever, and we were a tiny country to boot. But 2010 to 15, because this was the time he was being challenged, he was being criticized for corruption, questioned for corruption, and he just covered his tracks and made sure that he will not be challenged in parliament by simply buying ministers, giving me the ministerial portfolios to others. 107. I won't forget this, but if you guys have forgotten about this, that tells you about our political memory, no? Why we keep on repeating the same mistakes we once made. Um, yeah, okay. Get back to the book. Cannot get distracted. Right. Anything else you want to share?
No,
It's
ma'am.
it's
Right.
helpful
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
helpful that we can relate to this context, but also at the same time it's very sad that
See, totally. Mm-mm. But good, no? This kind of books helps us to look at our political cultures, our situations anew, and not forget, hopefully. Right. Righto. I was in the public gallery the day Prime Minister received his overwhelming vote of confidence, and that was the day the truth finally came out. Only no one was listening. I remember the grief-stricken figure of the dismissed finance minister of finance as he led his team into the chamber and was loudly booed by the members and the public. That week his car has been destroyed by angry mobs and his house stormed. Violence, once again, it's also part of political culture here too. Violence, right? Another dismissed minister had just been pulled out of his car, beaten insensible, and dragged along the road for 50 yards and then tied hand and foot, gagged and left by the roadside. And this kind of, yes, once again, violence, this is also something that you see in post-colonial nations with legacies of colonialism. That is also something we can discuss in terms of theory as well, because Frantz Fanon, writing, I think, Black Skin's White Mask, it's a seminal text in post-colonial theory. He puts forward this idea that because, right, because as countries with colonial histories, because we have been subjected to violent political rules for centuries, because we have been treated with violence, governed with violence for centuries, violence is deposited in the bones of the colonized, and that is a way in which we deal with external realities even today. So violence as a political legacy. You won't see this kind of violence, person being dragged in the road and left by gagged and beaten and left by the roadside in, for example, probably in Britain, doing this to a politician. There will be disagreements, there will be attack, verbal ones, but the kind of violence that we descend to in times of conflict. Think of Sri Lanka, think of Nigeria, think of Rwanda, think of the partition in India, think of the Black July in Sri Lanka, is the kind of violence that we break out into in times of conflict. And Frantz Fanon, in his book, theorizes it as a colonial legacy, something that we have inherited because we have been subject to violence for such a long time. That as we carry it in our blood. That is the kind of idea. Read it. Very interesting reading. Right. Okay. Yeah. Moving on.
Miss, when you have the time, please state the author's name and the title on the chat, please.
Shall I put it in the chat? Frantz
Yes,
Fanon.
please.
Give me a second. Okay. All right. Okay. Frantz Fanon is one of the key theorists in post-colonial studies. Frantz Fanon, I think black skins, white masks. Once again, the identity crisis that we have, that we kind of look up to the white, we want to be white, that kind of things he addresses in his book. The violence angle, I cannot remember exactly whether he takes it up in this one, but there's another book, the title I have forgotten, but just Google him a little bit and see. You should be able to find it. But it makes sense because this is also something, the violence, the kind of violence we resort to is something that we have in common with other post-colonial nations, third world countries. Righto. Partition is a very good example, and the Black July. That was my first and last. Sorry, he was still in the orthopedic hospital when the house met. That was my first and last visit to the parliament. It was also the only time I had sat on Mr. Nanga again since he taught me in 1948. The Prime Minister spoke for 3 hours and his every other word was applauded. He was called the tiger, the lion, the one and only, the sky, the ocean, and many other names of praise. He said that the Miss Crescent gang had been caught red-handed in their nefarious plot to overthrow the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, with the help of the enemies abroad. This is how democracy is being misappropriated. Democratic discourse is misappropriated to sustain power for completely selfish reasons. Okay? So, and we also have the kind of the public support for the leader or the prime minister. We also have something we see in Sri Lanka and especially in India too, this kind of individual idealization, right? So they supersede the party, like institution, ideology, so accountability. These godlike figures. Modi in India, here in this case, Nanga in his community, in his part, in his region, and then this prime minister, and in terms of Sri Lanka, I think in post-war Sri Lanka, the kind of power and the status Rajapaksa held kind of resonates with this individual being the most powerful person. He's above the party, he's above institutions, he's above the government itself sometimes, above accountability, right? Okay. So he is being called all these names, the tiger, the lion, and whatnot. Um, they deserve to be hanged, shouted Mr. Nanga from the back benches. This interruption was so loud and clear that it appeared later under his own name in the Hansard. Throughout the session, he led a pack of backbench hounds, straining their leash to get at their victims. These are the loud ones, right? The loud ones. I think you can remember in the parliament as well, this guy who threw chili water at the speaker or something. Can you remember? The ones who break the furniture, the ones who try to.
Wasn't he arrested recently for something?
I hope so. But yes, this kind of people, right? The backbench, the howling hounds. Uh, if anyone had cared to sum up Mr. Ranga's interruptions, they would have made a good hour's continuous yelp. Perspiration poured down his face as he sprang up to interrupt or sat back to share the derisive laughter of the hungry hyena. Right? So the kind of person he has turned out to be after being an exemplary scoutmaster, he has become a politician, and this is now his role, the hungry hyena. Right? All right. We need to finish up very quickly. When the Prime Minister said that he had been stabbed in the back by the very ingrates he had pulled out of the oblivion, some members were in tears. These impassioned political speeches, right? They have bitten the finger which their mother fed them, said Mr. Nanga. This too was entered in the Hansard, a copy of which I have before me. It is impossible, however, to convey in cold print the electric atmosphere of that day. I cannot now recall exactly what my feelings were at that point. I suppose I thought the whole performance rather peculiar. You must remember that at the point no one had any reason to think there might be another side to the story. The side that was silence, that is not in the Hansard, that not in the newspaper. The Prime Minister was still talking. Then he made the now famous or infamous solemn declaration. From today we must watch and guard our hard-won freedom jealously. He's talking in terms of the country, of the freedom, of independence, but what he is actually safeguarding is his own privilege. That only. Uh, never again must we entrust our destiny and the destiny of Africa to the hybrid class of Western educated, snobbish intellectuals who will not hesitate to sell their mothers for a mess of pottage. Mr. Nanga pronounced the death sentence at least twice more, but this was not recorded, no doubt because his voice was lost in the general commotion, right? The way the politicians spin narratives for their own advantage, this is a very good example. And what Dr. Makinde and the ex-minister of finance is being called the traitor, the coward, doctor of hope, your mother, so on and so forth. He has read his speech. I'm not reading now, I'm just paraphrasing, which was clearly prepared. The Hansard later carried a garbled version which made no sense at all. So his version, his speech, was not recorded. Somebody who is referring to the Hansard 10 years down the line will agree with the Prime Minister because Dr. Makinde's version was not recorded as it was spoken, right? In short, the Hansard boys wrote a completely new speech suitable to the boastful villain the ex-minister had become. For instance, they made him say he was a brilliant economist whose reputation was universally acclaimed in Europe. When I read this, I was in tears and I don't cry all that easily. Right. So, once again, you guys need to go through the book again, read closely and think of the things that we discussed today and think in terms of examples and instances where these things are crystallized, right? What kind of leader is Nanga? What sort of political culture does this represent, right? Antagonistic, rhetoric based, divisive, right? And selfish, driven by greed, definitely, right? Isn't it? So and also patriotism. It's advocating patriotism, othering, fear mongering, right? And also isolationist. I think because they are saying Africa and Europe, that education class, they are demonizing them, right? And falsification, grounded in falsification. If you think of what the newspapers have reported, what the Hansard has reported. So think about all these things, read it, and next week, let me see. Okay. So we have been discussing this all throughout, how Achabe's story is relatable, right? In what ways the narrative applicable to political realities of former colonies like India, Sri Lanka, the other countries, right? It is very, very relatable because we come from the same legacy of violence and oppressive rule,
Miss, if
right?
you consider Imran Khan being jailed, he
Yes,
was also
yes,
one voice against America, and then they
exactly.
say it's the
Uh,
fist muscles that fisted that America wanted him in because he would have been one of the biggest threat for rising against these
But
nepotism.
actually, yes, I don't know what the situation is right now, but he represent at least for the Pakistanis. Okay, I'm not telling you how it was about from an outsider's perspective, but for the Pakistan, especially the young generation, he was hope because he kind of stood up against the corruption and the old political class, right? And
Yes.
that is why he was so heavily penalized when the old people got the power back. Because during my PhD, I had a couple of Pakistani friends, and we had this discussion with Indians as well, how he represented a new kind of political tradition, political culture, and all that, and that is why he was imprisoned. And
Oxford
he
educated, captain of the country, cricket, and
Yes,
won the World Cup, and with all that
exactly.
credentials.
Yes, exactly. You can still do it. It's a matter of spinning the narrative, you guys. Always, right? And spinning the narrative can be very easily done by those who are in power because media is behind them. And we read, we depend on news, we depend on whatever to learn to learn about what is going on in the country. Now, of course, the situation is different, especially with the young people. We have access to social media, so we see different views. We hear from the perspective of international news outlets, for example. Once again, everything need to be taken with a grain of salt. Whatever is written and recorded and whatever opinion piece is given, always think in terms of this is not a truth. This is somebody's take on what is going on. This is somebody's belief about what is going on, right? Um, right. So, okay. So next week we finish reading, if you have not done so, Man of the People, and read Mbembe's The Aesthetics of Vulgarity, especially the page numbers I have given. I think I also have a copy, so I will share it with you. But this should be already available online as well. But anyway, I have a copy, so I will share it with you. Read that because this is something we are going to discuss in detail in relation to the novel, because you also this is important, you guys, because we are learning at the university level, no? And we are not only reading a story and trying to understand it, but also we are looking at theory at the same time. I think you will be comfortable because you have already gone through a theory course. uh, it always expands the horizon of your world, so to speak. Reading very good theoretical
What
work.
about the
And
name of the person you spoke? The post-colonial, the latest, the modern guy
this one,
who's...
this one, this one, Mbembe. The on the slide, can you see?
Yeah, this is the guy,
Mbembe.
is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Give me a second. I'll put the
Ah,
first
yeah, that is
name.
the first name I was thinking of, Achille.
Yes, actually, Mbembe is the aesthetics of vulgarity. He also wrote I think, yes, the book is on the post colony. So really good, good read. I immensely enjoyed reading it. You might not have time, but at least the part I have specified, it's a chapter of that book on the post colony aesthetics of
Hope you
vulgarity.
can share it with us, Miss. It'll be
Yes,
really
I will.
helpful.
I will, you guys. But you have to give me time. I have to start another lecture in a little bit. So after that, but anyway, before the end of the day, I will share it with you. for next week. Read those two and come. We'll
Your
have a good.
PhD was on World War or post-colonialism? What was your PhD,
No,
please?
no, not World War. I looked at South Asian conflict literature. So I
Wow, that's
did
interesting.
on, yes, I did on Sri Lanka civil Ilam War and the Kashmir conflict. That's why.
Kashmir also. Wow, that's
Yes,
interesting.
yes. Yeah, it was really good. So I did on. I read a lot about violence. That's why I could share a bit more extra with you, because
Thank you.
it's yeah. So anyway, so let's have a good discussion next week. These two, and for the uh, sorry, for the presentations, I will also share the links for the next week with you guys. No, not next week. Was it next week? 20. Yeah. Yes. 22nd or 23rd. No? I will share the details with you. You guys should be sending me your PowerPoints today, I think.
Yeah, Miss, and they will be very rough drafts.
That's
Uh,
okay. That's okay,
yeah.
you guys. I just want to. The thing is, it's not that. I mean, this is an offer, right? I want you to send what you have worked on so far, so I know you are not completely off points because I want you to score well. All right. So if you have made a like whatever the mistake in the direction you are going, I can tell you now so that you can make sure that you have a content that you can score well on. All right. That's it. Uh, Righto. Okie dokie. I'll see you next week then. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this session,
Thank you
Miss.
so
Thank
much,
you
Bye.
so much,
ma'am.
Miss. Bye.
Have a nice
Recording
Thank you.
stopped.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You too. Have a good day.